Hello. This talk is about my experiences working as a co-founder at a blockchain startup. It touches a bit on the technology of blockchain, but it's mostly about business culture and how the play between technology, new technology like blockchain, decentralized ledgers, and traditional business structures, when they come together, what happens essentially and what we experienced. So I'll talk a bit about how we use distributed ledger technology and mostly some of the pitfalls of its application. When I started, I've done this talk a couple of times now. When I started, there wasn't any sort of general theme. It's just a story. But as I've gone through it, there's kind of a general theme of trust coming out this, but both from the technology side, looking at blockchain and trustless systems, and also within business, within startups. So that's kind of the general theme that's running through this. Over the last 12 months, or maybe even a bit longer, I've seen a lot of blockchain startups from various different outfits. Some older businesses looking at sort of shoehorning blockchain in there. Some are good, some are bad. A couple that I like are SweetBridge, which is supply chain management. They've set up a non-profit foundation to do a blockchain supply chain management company, and that's going quite well. Another one is Open Law, which has come out of Consensus. Those two are quite smart and work very much around partnerships. Then two that are kind of different. The Kodak one you may have heard of in the press. I'm not really too sure. I've read it a couple of times. I don't know what they're doing. But they've bolted blockchain in there. And my favorite is Long Island Iced Tea, who renamed themselves Long Blockchain Iced Tea. And that's about it. Their shares went up 200%. It's a good move. Good move. Yeah, that's true. So to start the story, a friend of mine got in touch and said he'd heard of this fully funded startup. They were looking for a co-founder, a sort of CTO, CPO. It was based in Amsterdam. So I said, I'll have a chat. So I spoke to the co-founders on the phone, went out to Amsterdam. Seemed like a good fit, and it was Amsterdam, so I said, yeah, give it a go. So what was it? It was, when I got there, they were selling this as a secure online platform for industrial 3D printing. So the idea was, if you had somebody like KLM, and they want to move, or they've got a plane that's broken down in China, and they want to get a part printed, they don't necessarily want to hand their 3D design to the 3D print farm in China. They want to somehow get that there securely and know that their design is secure. The idea with this platform was to have a completely decentralized platform that could securely transfer those designs and get the part printed, but keeping the design safe. So basically the idea is it's the start of a distributed global factory, and it was to be built on blockchain, and also looking at using IPFS for storing the designs. This was a good fit for me. I'd done a couple of blockchain startups before this with varying levels of failure, basically, and I'd done some other startup stuff, but the idea around a kind of a marketplace, it sounded good. So the other co-founders, there was one sales and marketing guy. He was Dutch, and he had a 3D print farm, so he was big into the industrial 3D printing. And from a sales point of view, I mean, he knew everyone in the Netherlands. He actually knew the king even. So I mean, he was sorted for leads and getting in the doors. Our CEO came from a manufacturing background, and he had been in manufacturing in Germany for quite a bit and had strong links with the investors. The investors, they were all German. They were well-known German companies. One is a well-known German energy supplier, and the other is a well-known German bank. So these are old-school enterprises, very large corporate structures. So they'd all created their own innovation hubs to try to play catch-up. They were all focused on blockchain. But again, I mean, that's a whole different talk, innovation hubs. You know, they're still tied to that kind of corporate structure. So they had some ideas and how they saw this working. When I arrived, they already had a design. It was fully decentralized. It was public Ethereum, IPFS, but there was no business plan, and there was no real talk of tokens. The big argument was public versus private. Initially, they were looking at going public, but then if you run your business on public Ethereum, you're tied to the fluctuations and the volatility in Ether, so you never really know where you are as a business. So that's something we wanted to avoid, so we tried to steer it more towards a private. We had another problem in that 3D printing in itself is actually quite difficult. So focusing the business on 3D printing and getting the quality right was a completely different business to actually building a decentralized platform. What we came up with was a decentralized marketplace for all assets in the digital manufacturing value chain. We looked at stripping out the idea of quality in 3D printing and have that as a product and part of the business. We were looking at propagating our nodes, which was BigchainDB and Monax, as gateways for IoT connectivity, and our partners would actually operate these nodes. Our token would have been intrinsic to the platform, so we wanted a utility token. We didn't want something that was volatile. We weren't doing a public ICO. We wanted a closed ICO with our partners. And this sold well, thanks to our good sales and marketing guy. We had customers lined up. It was Dutch airline. It was KLM, there's only one. German transport company, 3D print firms. So it's all going well. I mean, what could go wrong? So we went to Berlin to sign the contracts to get this all kicked off. There'd been talk about changing the funding, but we could work with. When we got there, they said that what they wanted to do was a single ICO for the entire innovation hub. So that means we would have then been tied to the other businesses that were on public Ethereum, and we weren't allowed to raise our own investment. It had to go through the hub. So essentially said, it's not happening. I'm just going to walk away. If you didn't have that trust there with your partners in the beginning, there was no point in going in and following that out. So what actually killed the business, to an extent, it was kind of blockchain, because we had that ICO problem. But the problem is we didn't trust them, and they didn't trust us. We didn't trust them because they went back in their initial offering, and they didn't trust us to run the business and build a decentralized platform like we said we would. So I suppose the moral of it is, if you are going to get in and use new technology, you need to look at your underlying business model, and you have to change the corporate structure to actually fit what you're trying to do. You have to innovate the whole of the business. You can't have it the old way and the new way. And if you've got something that kind of works, don't go fucking about with it. Let the bit that works work, and then you can worry about decentralization and everything after that. That's it. Cheers.